What's going on, guys? My name's Grant, I'm one half of the Hermit duo, and today I'm going to bring you a review of Just Cause 3 on Xbox One because that's all I've actually had the chance to play it on. Just Cause 3 was released on December 1st, 2015, was developed by Avalanche Studios and published by Square Enix. It was released to a moderately successful release considering that it had built up so much hype due to Just Cause 2 having garnered such a following during its own time. It was rumoured for about a year before it was finally announced, and when it was, the fans went crazy for it. Story has never been a particular strong point of the Just Cause series for obvious reasons. It's made to be a game where you just indulge in chaos, and that's all the game's actually about, with story being more of an afterthought really. In Just Cause 2 this was very evident because you literally start just leaping out of a helicopter, no explanation as to backstory, and you dive straight into the chaotic world of Just Cause. Just Cause 3, pretty much the same, only it's a plane that you're diving off this time. The friendship with Mario seems a bit crowbarred in because there's no obvious reasons why the two would be friends. Mario seems quite dislikable and Rico is not exactly the most likeable person because his main thing in life is enjoying killing and blowing things up, which I mean sort of caters to the fans of this game series quite a bit, which I am one, so I can't really complain.
All units to these coordinates.
But there are points in the story where the humour makes up for the lack of real, cohesion in the story's elements, because like things the way Mario and Rico play off each other, Dima, it gives the story a lot of humour to it, and that humour sort of it elevates it a bit, and the way it does that is by making you laugh. It makes you sort of forget about the flaws in a way, not completely because there are some glaring flaws like the FPS issues, but we'll get into that later on. But mainly the story, yeah, it's not the best, but it is there and it's fairly enjoyable, fairly funny. So overall, I'll give it a 6.5 out of 10. Gameplay. Now, as I said, there are a few glaring flaws in the game that do cause a bit of immersion breaking. I don't want to say, because it's not really a game you get immersed in. It is when you start really blowing things up, because it's just so enjoyable to be able to do all that and have no consequences whatsoever. But things like, as I said before, the frame rate issues. If you go into a battle with too many enemies or cause too many explosions at once, tether too many times in quick succession, the frame rate will drop drastically, and it's more like you're watching a pretty slideshow of explosions than playing an actual game. And this happens more in the larger bases that have things like the big SATCOM dishes, the dishes that you've got to have come up from inside a hatch, and it can cause a lot of frustration. It can't really cause you to play any worse because it doesn't drop to the point where it's unplayable. Now, there are of course another few minor errors that I won't really gripe too much about, like the movement system isn't quite as smooth as you'd like. You'll tether into a hill and you'll use your wingsuit to try and get some decent elevation, and if you time it wrong by a millisecond, you'll go face first into the hill and it'll just completely ruin your movement streak. This can happen when you're already in the air as well, where one of the loading screens tells you if you tether in while you're wingsuited and pull down on the thumbstick, you will get good elevation. And yeah, 9 times out of 10 this works flawlessly, and it's really enjoyable because you can get some speed, some height, and just carry on your wingsuiting. But the 1 time out of 10, something will go wrong and you'll end up being reeled face first into the ground. And this very rarely kills you because it just scores what is realism. But when it breaks your streak like that, it can be very disheartening because you just want to get to point A to point B as quickly as possible, and wingsuiting is generally the quickest way to do it, short of a helicopter, which aren't always a hand. So I'd say that is sort of a big thing, but it's not too big because, again, it's not entirely game breaking. Now, other than these faults, the game plays extremely well. It's very smooth, it's very beautiful, and even when you get a close-up on the character's face like Rico or Dima, I mean, I know you're not supposed to mention graphics when you're talking about games, but the graphics are stunning. I think the main reason behind that is because it's got Square Enix as a publisher. Square Enix have always gone for as much of a polished look as humanly possible. But it's not only that that's good, the combat is very smooth. You may sort of get bullet sponged for a bit and have to take cover to recover, but because the recovery system happens so quickly, it's not really a deal breaker.
Feels like an explosion is coming.
Citizen, you must leave the premises immediately.
I'm so ready for this.
Now, where the game shines is where you've got to go into a base and destroy all the chaos items to take over it. And I feel this is where they've done absolutely right, because you can use your tether if you, I mean, there's even an achievement for not using any bullets whatsoever, so you've got to use only your tether. And that, I mean, it's frustrating if you don't do it immediately at the beginning, because later on the bases can get a bit difficult to do with only tethers, but when you do it, it's so satisfying because you've just managed to do what, you know, it may be something that separates the players, the ones who can and the ones who can't, but things like that. And they give you so many choices when you're not going for that achievement, because you can shoot, you can use your unlimited C4 mines, you can use explosive barrels, tether them together and all that. And it just makes the game really enjoyable because you've got so many options to choose from. You're a bit like a kid in a candy shop. And the way that they've designed Rico and the things they have him say when you blow things up, it sort of encapsulates just what the game was probably thinking, because he makes these comic puns at the end of every time you blow something up. So if you destroy a transformer, he'll say, "No more charge, you're welcome." And yeah, it's cheesy and it's not really something you expect to see in games these days, but it's because the game doesn't take itself too seriously, which I feel is where a lot of other games fail. A lot of games could do with a more, a softer approach, more comedy oriented, like Borderlands, Just Cause. And not because it's when a game takes itself too seriously that you can sort of laugh at it rather than with it. A good example of that may be Darksiders 2, because while yeah, it is a very serious topic about the game, you know, his brother's in trouble, you've got to save him, all that, but the game itself is quite goofy, and because the story is trying to take itself so seriously, it sort of falls on its head. Just Cause 3 doesn't do that. It knows it's goofy and it embraces it and runs with it. So overall, I give gameplay a solid 8 out of 10, because while it does have its flaws, for the vast majority of it, it is very enjoyable. Combat. Now, combat is something that I've touched on previously in this review. I've talked about it in gameplay, I've talked about it in story and minor parts, but the combat, I feel, is very polished in a way, because it's basically the same combat system from Just Cause 2, only aimed down sights is something you can only get via an upgrade with the gears. But overall, I'd say it's very smooth, it's very enjoyable. As I said, with the bullet sponge part, it can be a little bit frustrating because you've got to dive behind cover, or you might just die out of sheer bad luck. But again, for the vast majority of it, it's very enjoyable. The frame rate issues can cause a bit of aggravation when you're in the middle of combat, because you've got to either tether out really quickly or really struggle to find your targets and take them down, or again, get a bad shot and die. I mean, the one good thing they've put in is if you do die, the things you've already blown up in a base are still blown up when you respawn, so you don't have to worry about having to go back and redo those when you get back into it. So, I mean, yeah, while it's not perfect combat, I wouldn't say it would ever rival that of The Witcher 3 or other games with very smooth combat, like even the Batman games, combat in that's very free-flowing, very smooth. Just Cause 3, I'd say it's close, but doesn't quite reach it. So overall, I'd give combat a 7.5 out of 10. conclusion. So overall, Just Cause 3 is a very enjoyable game that as many people as possible should get their hands on it to try it out, whether you're a fan of the series or not. I mean, it's not something that you want to go into with too serious a mindset, because if you do that you won't enjoy the game. It's like if you go into an Adam Sandler film expecting a more serious movie and go in and get Don't Mess With the Zohan. First time you watch it you're not going to enjoy it, but if you go into it a second time knowing that it's just a load of goofs, you will probably enjoy it, because in that scenario it can be a very enjoyable film. Just Cause 3 is the same in that regard. If you go in expecting a serious game like The Witcher 3, like Mirror's Edge, like something like that, you won't enjoy it because there is no seriousness to it whatsoever. There is sort of a serious aspect to the story, because you've got to take Medici back from this, dictator, governor, general, whatever he's called, the Ravello. And that is a very serious topic, because it's war, obviously, and it's how most of the wars have started throughout human history. But for the large part, it's just very, very goofy, very funny, and very enjoyable because of that. It's very tongue-in-cheek, so to say. And so overall, I'd like to give this game a 7.8 out of 10.
Loading the tank on board now.
So thank you very much for watching, thank you very much for listening. Please, if I've missed anything that you think should have been in the review, comment down below, and maybe I'll put it as an annotation. Please smash that thumbs up button, and of course subscribe to become a hermit today, and we'll see you next video.